called earwax. earwax are the manufacturers of the eye clearscope endoscope, which is the device that we use to visualize the ear so we can safely remove earwax. We also provide training in endoscopic ear care, and we have a online portal where members of the public in the UK currently can find their nearest earwax removal specialist. So if you've got a blocked ear and you're in the UK, visit our website, which is www.clearwax.co.uk. Simply enter your postcode or your city or town and you'll find your nearest specialist. We have a client here, he's actually a trainee doctor. He has regular wax impaction, and he normally gets this removed. He's studying in Leicester, however he's up from up north. The wax itself, it's this mushy consistency. When I started, I kind of said to him I'd like to just put some olive oil drops in there just to soften it, because I know this type of wax, it doesn't vacuum and suction very well, and the wax was quite deep as well, this soft mushy type of wax. And it's always a bit, you have to be very careful when you're removing wax very deep from the ear like this using a Jobson horn, because if you make contact with the canal wall, which is the inner 2/3 of the ear canal, which is very sensitive and uncomfortable. But the patient, in a sense, was very reluctant for me to put any drops initially. So I said, that's fine, that's not a problem. But what we agreed was we'll do one ear with a dry technique without any drops in to soften this and change the consistency, and the other ear we'll put some drops and we'll compare the procedure. The patient was happy to compare, so in future he kind of knows what works best. And it was interesting for me, it's almost like a little kind of study to assess the same patient. The consistency of the wax is very similar in both ears, so it's a like for like comparison. We're comparing the efficacy really of using olive oil drops to change the consistency of the wax to see if it improves the procedure in terms of comfort, time, and effectiveness. And well, you'll see the outcome when we do the other ear. So again, we've got the occlusion out. The patient does like all the wax being removed. He obviously wanted me to show him post-procedure. I said we'll remove as much wax as possible, just as long as it's safe to do so. I'm not going to compromise patient safety just so they want every little speck of wax being removed. I explained to him, which is good because they're a trainee doctor, they need to know this because they'll be treating patients in the future, that wax is actually a very natural, healthy secretion by the ear. It has many health benefits. Earwax, and I'll just outline them to you. Earwax is slightly acidic. The acidity of earwax helps inhibit the growth of bacteria. It doesn't necessarily kill bacteria, but bacteria have, for bacteria to replicate like most other cells in the body, there's a microorganism in the cell called a ribosome. It has two parts, and one part of the ribosome is designed to collect different amino acids from within the cell and bring them back to the main part of the ribosome. And so it's like you've got a master ribosome, the top subsection of the ribosome, telling the other part of the ribosome to go away and collect this amino acid and collect that amino acid in this order, and it brings it back to the control center of the ribosome, which then gets these amino acids in chains, and these chains of amino acids basically creates protein. So the acidity stops some of this bacteria from multiplying, so to speak. So it doesn't necessarily kill it, it just stops it from multiplying. Sorry, a bit of an in-depth scientific answer there. I thought I'll kind of let you know if you're interested. Also, the acidity is believed to repel insects, bugs, cockroaches, all these creepy crawlies from entering the ear. It's believed to be an evolutionary trait. So our ancestors, many people still in indigenous parts of the world kind of sleep on the floor still, and it's a protective mechanism to stop insects and creepy crawlies from entering the ear. Earwax is slightly greasy and oily, so this greasy and oily properties help lubricate and moisturize the skin that lines the ear canal, so it prevents it from drying and cracking. And earwax is sticky, so any foreign particles, dust or dirt that enter the ear, they stick to the wax, and as the wax naturally migrates out of the ear, which it does for 90% or 95% of the population, as it migrates, it expels with it any foreign particles, dust or dirt that enter the ear. So you can see we're just trying to mop up as much as we can, as safely as we can. I did tell the patient we're in the bony part now, and obviously we're not near the eardrum per se, but it can be a bit sensitive. The patient was fine for me to continue. He just really wanted all of this wax to be removed. So this wax, it's a clay type consistency, and I suspect that's because there's a lot more. So 60% of earwax is composed of dead skin. I suspect in this patient, what I've noticed with this type of consistency of wax, there's a bit more dead skin. So probably 70%, 80% of dead skin. And this dead skin, as it amalgamates with all the other components that form earwax, like sweat, alcohols, cholesterols, fatty acid chains, that are all secreted by the outer third of the ear canal. Once they combine, that's the combination of all these ingredients composes earwax. So I think this patient's got a high percentage because of dead skin, so probably 70%. And that dead skin, as it kind of dies, it becomes damp, soggy, and I think that's why he's got this consistency. And you can see he's got a lot more dry dead skin medially near the eardrum. So he has got a bit of otitis externa, which is a bit of eczema. It's very superficial. So what I mean by superficial, with otitis externa, you can categorize it either being superficial or deep. Superficial is when you've just got a bit of dry skin on the surface of the ear canal. Deep is when the whole ear canal itself, the fleshy, the cartilage portion, the bony portion, that is also inflamed, and you get a real inflammation of the ear canal. Where superficial is the ear canal itself is not inflamed, it's just loads of dry skin flakes. Okay, I'm just mopping up. The client was very intrigued by this technique. As I mentioned, they do have their ears regularly cleaned. They normally have it done at the hospital using traditional microsuction with an operating microscope. Typically for microsuction with a microscope, the patients are laid down on the couch. A speculum, so kind of what we call an ear funnel or cone, is inserted into the ear. And the instrument is then so the instrument in this case would be a Jobson horn. It's inserted through the speculum, and visualization is done with the microscope. So with a microscope, the views can be very highly magnified, but the field of view is very narrow, and it's even narrower because you're putting a speculum in the ear. Just had a very nice call from a lady today. She attended a course, one of our Clearwax courses back in December last year. Previous to that, she was using loops. So loops are similar to a microscope, not as good, must admit. The magnification is not as good as with loops compared to an operating microscope, and the depth of view is not as good. I originally got trained in wax removal using head loops, and I found, yeah, for wax that's near the outer part of the ear canal, that's fine, but anywhere past the first or second, anywhere past the second bend, so halfway down the ear canal, it is so difficult to visualize the eardrum. So the patient was very intrigued to have endoscopic wax removal being performed, and they really enjoyed it. Yeah, and this lady who came on our course was actually was a call today to say thank you. It's really changed her practice, her clinic, the way the treatment she can offer her patients. So she's going to be recommending us and writing a testimonial for us. So this is the patient's right ear. I used drops initially straight away. I soaked it for a few minutes, and you can see it's, with the suction, it's still a bit soggy and mushy, and it is blocking the tube slightly, but it's far more easier to perform suction in this ear compared to the first ear. There's equal amount of wax. In fact, you could argue this ear had more wax. I would say the procedure time was literally halved by using the drops. But there's pros and cons. So with suction, it's a bit noisy. Some people don't like the noise. It is pretty, when I say it's noisy, if you've not had it done before, believe me, it is quite noisy. It can reach up to between 100 and 130 decibels, which is very, very loud. It's one of the negatives of it, although it's the safest procedure. Every procedure of wax removal has risks, and obviously we explain this to our patients prior to having the procedure done. We've got a consent form, like anyone should have if they're offering this treatment. And one of the risks is the noise from the suction unit. It can cause temporary or permanent hearing loss. It can induce tinnitus or exacerbate tinnitus that the patient will already have. These are all kind of low risks, very low risks, but they're all possible. So I would say microsuction has the same risk as ear irrigation or syringing, but far less. And they're less likely to develop the same possible side effects compared to ear irrigation. So yeah, that's one of the drawbacks of suction. But with a dry instrument like a mechanical instrument, should I say, like a job saw or an ear hook, the pros of that, there's no noise. The negatives of that is they're a bit more difficult to utilize deeper in the ear. And if the wax is really, really impacted and there's no opening for the instrument to be inserted through, it's not as effective, and it takes longer, sometimes anyway, when you're using ear hooks. Sometimes it's quicker. You hook into a piece of wax, comes out in a big solid piece. So they've both got pros and cons. I asked the patient what they preferred at the end, and they said, yeah, definitely preferred me putting the drops in, the olive oil drops. They found the procedure, they didn't find the left ear uncomfortable, but they just found the right, because the speed of the procedure is much quicker. Patient much preferred it. Putting drops into the ear, something that I learned myself. I was never trained to do that. It's just through experience, and I think a lot of people are doing that now. I do advise all of the trainees that attend our course that I probably use drops probably 50% of the time. That's anecdotally, I think, top of my head. So I do use drops quite a lot in procedures. I think it just helps quicken the procedure, which is kind of what, it's not because we want to get rid of the patient, it's just more for the patient comfort. They can have a procedure that's done just as effective but quicker. They much prefer that. Just like this patient, it's a classic example. So there's the tympanic membrane, the eardrum, nice and healthy. Patient is very happy, showed in the video, very, very happy with the outcome. And yeah, very grateful. I hope you enjoyed that video, guys. I'll try and upload some more videos.